What is up, guys? Welcome back to OverTakes. This is Misfit, and today we're going to be doing our final team preview for the 2021 Overwatch League season. Today we're going to be talking about the Shanghai Dragons, Toronto Defiant, Washington Justice, and finally the Vancouver Titans. I would like to thank everybody first for joining me. Thank you very much. If you're new, thanks a lot for stopping by. We're going to be talking more and more Overwatch League as we get closer to the season. We're going to drop this episode, then we're going to hit power rankings and start talking about the May Melee preview coming up. So if you're interested in that, please hit a like, hit a subscribe, and hit that alert bell. All the YouTube stuff would be fantastic. Would be greatly appreciated. But let's dive into this. So yeah, we're on our final preview, guys. So we're going to talk Shanghai and Toronto, Washington, and Vancouver, and then we're going to jump into our power rankings and then start talking May Melee preview stuff. And the season's right around the corner. 2 weeks and a couple of days, probably, somewhere in there. So yeah, we're gonna get going here. We're going to start diving into the season. I'm ready. Your guys are ready, I'm sure. And yeah, it's been a long wait, and it's almost here, guys. You just got to hold out a couple more weeks, and we got the Overwatch League back. So yeah, let's dive into this. Let's talk about our first team on today's episode, the Shanghai Dragons. Okay, Shanghai had a fantastic 2020 season. You redid the roster. They had a fantastic season last year. Finished first in APAC. They were the best team over there for most of the year, and then along came. Then along came the Seoul Dynasty and gave him a contest towards the end of the season. Made it to the Final Four with Seoul. Lost. They had a great season. It wasn't unexpected. They were expected to be better. They've improved, obviously, since the first year. It wasn't hard to do. Hitting into 2019, they got better, and they got better last year, and to the point where, that roster was fantastic. They played really well throughout. There was a lot of challenges, of course, with the pandemic, and they were one of the teams that were over in Asia, and we had the whole scheduling snafu and all the stuff that was going on early on in the season. But yeah, they had a great year last year. Now this year, I'm looking for a lot of the same things. Let's talk about who they got rid of. Well, or left, or what have you. They lost Stan 1, Fearless, Luffy, Ding, Gigori, and Dia. Those are a lot of people on the roster that were, a lot of them were bench players and stuff like that. I mean, obviously they got rid of both of their main tanks, but they replaced them. We'll talk about it in a second. Fate came in, all that. Gigori left. She was a mainstay on the team since Stage 2 of Season 1, first female Overwatch League player. Unfortunately, they let her go. She wasn't getting really any play time. Same thing with Ding, not much play time. Luffy got some play time, but, kind of okay in there, not the greatest. They made some calculated and necessary moves to move forward. They did bring back, last year Fearless came back. He had a fantastic year. He was, much better than everyone anticipated, including myself. Fantastic. But he moved on to Dallas, and they also basically it was a contract restructuring, it seemed like, with DM, where he left and then they re-signed him. So this year's team looks to be just as good, and it's hard to say get better, but maybe further on into the playoffs than the finals, maybe in the finals. Hard to say right now with what's going to happen. They were the best team in the East last year, and I don't see much changing in that. Now this year they brought in a couple of different people that, much like San Francisco, might not be the same guys. That they have a different play style, but they're going to be good, just as good, if not maybe better. So let's look at this year's roster. We have Izayaki and Li Zhegong back on support. And then they brought in Molly from Chengdu as a backup, kind of maybe an alternate. You're going to need, I keep saying this, but you're probably going to need some double support meta stuff, or double flex supports. So it's fantastic. Bring in Molly. He was okay with Chengdu. He wasn't bad. He was just kind of okay. But you know what? Hey, if he's going to be able to work on a couple different characters and play alongside Izayaki in a double flex support meta, hey, that's fantastic. And then we also have, of course, the DPS is stacked as usual, and then they added Erster in there, so we have Fleta, Lip, Erster, and Diem. You don't get much better than that now, do you? You have the reigning MVP, you have Lip, who's very well could have been Rookie of the Year, you have Erster, who is kind of in that, I guess I want to say, he's like in a redemption arc, I guess. The last year did not go too well in Atlanta for him. It seemed like he just wasn't, I don't know if he wasn't invested or they weren't invested in him. There was a disconnect there. I mean, he was playing Junkrat and May mostly. He wasn't doing much of the heavy lifting on the DPS side. They left that to, at the beginning it was Baby Bay and Edison, and then later it was Edison and a couple other people in and out. But yeah, it's a good move for, I think, for both parties here. I think Erster on this team could elevate, his stock back up, and also I think it's a good guy to have around when you get into these metas with hero pools and all that stuff. You have a guy who is very versatile, can play a bunch of different things, and it's good to have him there. And of course you have Diem back with the long range hit scan. He's going to be your guy. Fleta's really good too. He's reigning MVP. I mean, I think your mainstays on DPS are going to be Fleta and Lip, of course. And then the biggest changes on this team are going to be at the main tank position, where we have Fate coming over from Florida, playing alongside a Void, who was also an MVP candidate. I mean, this team is stacked. There's no other way to say it. Stacked team. They're going to be in the mix. And bringing Fate in to reunite him with Moon could go one of two different ways. I think it's going to be fine. I think he's a good shot caller, a leader, fantastic, that kind of thing. He's a good main tank. He's above average. He's, maybe you can say he's not on the same level as Fearless. I think they're on the same level mechanically. I think he brings some extra things Fearless didn't have. I think he brings a lot of leadership, a lot of locker room presence, all that kind of stuff, and he's comparable skill-wise to Fearless on most heroes. I think he got a bum rap in Season 2, and I think he did fantastic with the Mayhem. I thought he did a lot of things. I'm just going to say that. He was probably one of the better surprises with the Mayhem. So I think him coming back to play with Moon on the Dragons is going to be fantastic for them. I gave them an A on their moves, just because I think that they got rid of what they needed to get rid of, and they brought in components I think that are going to work really well for them, and they didn't go crazy and sign a bunch of different players, like 100 of them, or what? Not 100, but you know what I mean. They're very succinct in getting what they needed. They didn't sign guys because they were available or just let's try this out. I think they went out, they got exactly what they needed for bench and for starters. I think you could say at points they needed a guy like Fate last year. There were some matches where they had to reverse sweep, where if they had probably a leader and on the server leader kind of guy a little bit more than maybe some of the other guys, that someone like Fate they would have been a different outcome, I think. Me personally. A lot of people are not for this move. I think it's going to be good for them. I think it might be better than what people are expecting. I just expect a lot from this team. Tournament-wise, I think you're talking them and everybody else on this side. I'm sure we'll have some discussions of this team and that team that are challenging them. I don't think they're going to be a team that's going to be a massive disappointment this year. The players on this team are just too skilled, and they have a good core that they kept from last year, and they just added some components. They added Fate, Erster, and Molly, essentially, were the guys that they added. Everybody else on this team has been there since 2019. So they've played with each other a long time. So, I mean, you could say what you want about, redoing rosters, and it seems like they did, but they didn't, really. They added Fate, which was, I think, a necessary component to add. So this team has a whole season under their belt together, the mainstays. Your Izzyaki, Void, Lip, Fleta, Lee Jae-gon. They've all played with each other. and DM too. You can throw DM in there too. It's a no-brainer that they're going to be up in the discussions with best team in the league. Obviously, the best team on the eastern side of things. They're going to be the benchmark over there, and I look for them to challenge everybody and anybody talking about championships this year. I'm really high on Shanghai. High on Shanghai. Or am I Shanghai? I don't know. Am I Shanghai? Some people might think I'm high. I don't know. But no, seriously, guys, I think they're going to be great this year. They have a lot going on. I think I'm excited to watch this team play this year. It's like I always say, I love watching the best and the greats play, and I think this team is going to be great. I think people forget how good Izayaki is. I think he got a bad rap in the GOATS thing when he came in with the Valiant and that whole mess. Obviously, you notice Moon's over in Shanghai. Who does he have? He has Izayaki and he has Fate. There are two guys that he's worked with. I mean, I saw Izayaki last year, and I thought he was a different player than when he was on the Valiant and all that. I think he's low-key one of the... Well, actually, it's not really low-key, but a lot of people overlook him when they talk the best flex supports in the league. I think he's great. Void cleared all of the negative stuff that he had thrown about when he was on the Gladiators. Even though if you really watch the Gladiators, he was one of the reasons why they were in games. I just think it's just a fantastic team. And of course you got Lip, Li Jiegong. A lot of people say Li Jiegong is very aggressive. But you know what? When you have Izayaki, Fleta, when you have this team, you can go out on a limb once in a while and be a little... Sometimes you have to be when you play Lucio. I think people forget that. Look, he's not playing Reddit Lucio. Some people's perspective on what Lucio should do is he should be hanging over above, waiting for the boop. Way more to playing Lucio than playing like some dude that's in Grandmaster that runs YouTube videos. Watch a pro. Watch him and watch how he plays. This guy plays, and him, Funny Astro, FD God. Those guys play, I like the way they play. Yeah, he ints a little bit, sure, but he can afford to do that, and sometimes you have to as Lucio. You have to grasp the whole picture of how to play the character. I mean, talk to anybody that's at this level. Sometimes you die, but I love this team. I think they're going to be great, and I'm looking for a lot from this team. Obviously, I think they're going to be... I don't have to give you like a range where I think they're going to go. I think they're going to be fantastic. All right, so we spent a lot of time talking about the Dragons. Let's move on to the next team. We are going to be talking about the Toronto Defiant. Okay, so here we are, guys. We're in Season 3 of the Defiant, and we're on the fourth rework of this team. So last year, there was a lot of... Last year's team, there was a lot of different opinions on it. Were they going to be good? Were they going to be bad? Were they a team that was just fan favorites and that kind of thing? I think the pandemic kind of screwed them up a little bit, and here's why. I think this team was a live event team. I think this team was more built last year. We're talking about was built to be at the live events and that kind of thing, and with Surefour, Agilities, Nevix. They were all fan favorites. Kariv. This team was built around... Yeah, it was built around kind of a... And I do kind of agree with it. But it's not like they went out and got terrible players that people like. Because that happens too. There are fan favorites that are, not the greatest. But they're cool guys. They're good streamers or whatever. I think this team had potential to be, slightly above mid-table. And they did not achieve that at all. It just didn't work out. Surefour checked out somewhere in the middle of the year last year. A lot of the things didn't work out. They ended up bringing in Cruz. They had Kelix to start, left over from the year before. They brought in Cruz. He worked out okay. Wasn't great. It didn't hit the mark where we all thought it would. With this team, well, not we all. I thought it would. I thought they would be decent enough. I didn't think they would be bottom of the table last year and that kind of thing, and just basically playing through the string again and maybe surprising people. I think they had a couple of good tournaments towards the end of the year where they looked a little bit better than they did early on in the season. but still disappointing last year. So they decided once again to blow it up, which, we're on, like I said, we're on the 4th time we've done this with the Defiant, going back to Season 1, where they had an all-Korean team to start. They did decently in the first stage with the GOATS thing, and then they fell off the table, and then they brought in all the guys like Gods and Magnachu and that, and they kind of rolled with that a little bit more on the second season, and now they got rid of a bunch of guys. So here's who has left the Defiant this time around. They lost pretty much everybody except for Beast and Logix. So it was Kariv, Roki, Magnachu, Surefour, Numlocked, Agilities, Cruz, Zik, and Nevix. They're all gone. That's a lot of guys. So they got rid of all those guys, and they picked up Aztac, Ansunajay, Sato, Hisu, Michelle, Nast. I don't listen to other people sometimes when they talk about some of these names with numbers in them. And Lastro, they picked up finally after he was jettisoned from the Valiant roster. So before they signed Lastro, looking at this roster, I gave it a C+. Definitely upgrades across the board. I think with Lastro, they solidified it as a B, because I think he is a really, really good flex guy. I know that Aztac is also a really good, coming from contenders, is a good flex support too. But like I keep saying, you're going to need 2. With Lastro on this team and Ansunajay, I think that's going to solidify that back line. Or, I'm sorry, Aztac. Ansunajay, from all reports that I've heard, he's the real deal. He's going to be good. And I think bringing in KDG as the coach is a fantastic ad. I think he did a lot with Philly, and he brought some of his guys with him, which is also key on this team. He brought Sato and Hisu, who are fantastic. I think Hisu was underrated last year a little bit through the year. There was a lot of good new DPS players in the league, but Sombra and a couple of the other things that they were doing were kind of pivotal to what the Fusion did last year. I think he made a huge difference, and he has a wonky, odd kind of hero pool, Widowmaker, Sombra kind of thing. He played some Hanzo last year. I mean, yeah, long range, and Sombra probably would consider him in that. He's like kind of a flex, a different kind of flex to me. You bring him in. Sato had a fantastic year last year. He was vastly improved from when he was in the season 2. GOATS, different scenario. I take that season with a grain of salt with a lot of these guys. Last year, I was rooting for him. I knew he was better than, advertised, but also the thing he had. Yes, this support line is going to be good with the Defiant, but he doesn't have Alarm. Alarm enabled a lot of the stuff that he did because Alarm is just freaking amazing. They fed a lot of resources into Sato. They made sure he was up, made sure he was alive, so when he inted, it wasn't that bad. It actually looked calculated and doing like he was doing what he was supposed to do sometimes. But I thought he was great last year, but this year is going to be a big year for Sato. He's not going to be on Philly, not going to have Alarm. He's going to have a decent backline, but he's luckily with his coach who knows how he plays. Sometimes I think it's pivotal when you get a coach in there to know how how all the guys play, but guys like main tanks, that's the guy that makes the ball start rolling. So if you know his play style and you can build around it with different players, who they brought in Michelle from Seoul, if him and Michelle can work together and play really well, I think this team is going to be vastly improved from last year. But the common North American problem is everybody upgraded. I don't think they're going to be in the bottom. I don't think they're going to be in the top either. I think this team has a lot of potential to do some things this year. Especially, with Logix as well. You got, Tracer covered. He can play long-range hit scans. There's a lot of different components on this team that could work out really well. It's just, the DPS, I'm not as big a fan as I was in years past, but I think they're better than Surefour and Agilities with Hisu, Nast, and Logix? Probably. Hisu, I think, is underrated. Don't know much about Nost. I know Logix is good. I know he's solid. So there's a lot of tracer metas and stuff like that, kind of working their way in right now. I think they got hero pools covered. I don't think it's the greatest part of this team. I don't think it's the part of this team that I have the most questions about, other than if Sato can play without Alarm and that system that they had in Philly, but he's got KDG to help him out there. So this is a very interesting team. I don't really know what to think of them too much, except for that I think they're going to be average probably throughout most of the year. And that doesn't mean they're a bad team to me. I don't think they're going to be beating teams that are well above their skill level. I think they'll beat all the teams below them in skill level. Some teams that we've talked about that are just not great in NA or the West, whatever we're calling it this year. But I do see them like. It's hard to say with this amount of good teams I think that are in the West. I'm going to have to go with them. I'm going to have to go with them in the lower part of that, the West bracket. Kind of as the gatekeeper to the middle chunk of teams in the current scenario, without having seen them play and all that. Like I said, I gave them a high grade, mostly because that team last year did not work, period. It should have. I think a lot of it had to do with it was a live event kind of team, that much like Atlanta was. I think those guys fed off crowds and being in the spotlight and all that stuff. They played better, is what I'm getting at. Surefour, Agilities, Kariv, those guys were better in those scenarios. Much like, with Atlanta, they kind of shit the bed a little bit last year too. They weren't terrible, but they weren't as good as they should have been. Guys like Dogman, Baby Bay, early on, some of those guys, they love the live thing. They love the crowd. They love playing with the crowd and all that stuff. I think that was one of the problems that happened with that team last year. So that's why I gave them a higher grade. It doesn't mean that they're going to finish any higher than they did last year. But yeah, I just don't see. I don't see them as a bad team. Like I said, that's my thoughts on Toronto. And now let's move on to our next to last team on this list. Let's talk about Vancouver Titans. Okay, so yeah, Vancouver. We all know what happened last year. They had second best team going into the season. There were problems with the scenario after COVID and all that. They got rid of that team, and they just kind of slapped something together with Dalton, Shredlock, Rolf, and Shockwave, Kasa, Suna, Karkar. One of the aforementioned was let go for reasons that we're not going to talk about on this show because they've already been dealt with and discussed. So now this year, they've kept some of the components of that team. Now, I didn't think they were the worst. For what they had to do and what they ended up doing last year, the team they put together had some promising players on it, I thought. I thought some of the guys were great. Shredlock was really good. I thought Dalton was kind of underrated. Or not Shredlock, I'm sorry, Shockwave. Shredlock wasn't bad either. But now they're kind of going back onto the budget thing again. So, once again, we have Dalton, we have Shredlock, we have Rolf, Linkser they brought in from the Outlaws, Fried Wiener, Fire, and Teru. I'm going to be honest. This team is not going to be able to, in my opinion, in NA, they're not going to be able to compete with those upper guys. They're going to struggle down here, or in any scenario right now. I think there's guys on this team that have potential. I think they picked up some guys just to pick up guys with experience, like in Linkser and in Fried Wiener and Fire as well. I think they're trying to put together what they can, the best they can for right now. I think they went from taking Runaway and bringing them in the 2019 season, high budget, high expectations, high money, high output, but they changed their narrative, I think, when the pandemic hit and they're going budget. Because that's the only explanation for this. It's not a terrible roster by any means. This could probably win some tournaments maybe in contenders. But I don't think for the Overwatch League, some of these guys are decent, players. I think that they're just outskilled by some of the other guys that are there. There are other guys that are, or other teams that are just way more stacked. Even some of the teams that we have not come to look at as being decent teams, like the Boston Uprising, they're better this year. Toronto is better than they were last year, like we just talked about. I see this team as the bottom of NA, or the West, whatever we're calling it today. But yeah, this team is not the greatest. I gave them a D because there was a potential to get guys, young guys with skill, with talent that weren't super expensive in here, but they just didn't do that. Linkser was great at one point. Is he great now? Fried Wiener, he was always kind of above average to average. He filled gaps in for Atlanta. Rarely started. Fire, same thing. Atlanta didn't start that much. Don't know much about Teru. Rolf, Shredlocked, and Dalton were all there. Dalton, I thought, was one of the best parts of last year's team. And he's going to be one of the best parts of this year's team. Are they going with the maybe giving Fried Wiener and Fire a chance to start? Probably. Maybe they show me something. On paper, looking at it right now, I don't think they're going to do much. They failed to really upgrade in any position, and I would say in a couple they lost one of their best players in Shockwave. He's on Philly now. He was an integral part to what they did. Having him off this roster, Linkser's not going to fill his shoes. He's way better than Linkser right now. Shoot me for saying it, I don't care. I'm not talking about 3 years ago. I'm talking about today. That's some of the things, like with some of these players, that we're glomming onto some of the stuff. Even I do it too. Now, I'm not going to deny it. I glom onto how good some of these guys were, and compared to some of how these guys are coming in and how they are now. I talk about it all the time. I'm a Prophet standboy. Is he the best DPS in the league? Probably not right now. But he still has moments where he's doing things. But it's just Linkser's living on reputation is what I'm getting at. Right now, I don't think he's the best. I don't think he was better in Shockwave. But I guess they got who they could get in their eyes in bringing in Linkser. And now this isn't a rail on Linkser moment. He still has moments where he's freaking fantastic. I just thought Shockwave at this moment was better. If you talked to me in 2018, him up against Shockwave, there would have been no question Linkser was the best. Yeah, he was one of the guys that was one of the stars in the league early on. Long range hit scan, doing the Widowmaker thing, all that kind of stuff. I remember several times just being amazed by what he did, on Widowmaker, especially on maps like Anubis and things like that. Yeah, he was great. I'm not saying he's past his prime. I'm just saying he's not as good as Shockwave. He still has stuff left, but it is what it is. Fried Wiener showed moments where he could be good, but he's kind of unproven. Same thing with Fire, unproven. Shredlocked looked decent at times last year, and he had games where he was abysmal. Rolf is good. He was good at one point, but at this point, right now, I wouldn't put Rolf isn't in the top upper echelon of flex supports where you need that. You need an absolute stud for the flex support, and it's just not. I don't see it happening with this team this year. Now, this sounds a little bit like me talking about the Valiant last year, but I just don't see it. It's just they're going to be a bottom team all year long, and I think there might be moments where if a right meta from hero pools or something like that, where they can get into a tournament. Maybe. Because, remember, the tournament situation is going to be... You still got to get by the Shock, or Dallas, or Gladiators, or Florida, or Washington. Or there's too many layers up at the top there that are going to just deter them from doing anything. So, that's my take on Vancouver. Not the most surprising take on a team, I should say. But that's my take on Vancouver. Let's move on to the last team on our list. Let's talk about the Washington Justice. Okay, Washington Justice. So, this team last year was pretty much garbage for a good portion of the season. I mean, there's no way to go around it and come up with anything. They had Roar and Elevote, and Lulsish could never get his thing. The best parts about this team were Corey and Stratus, but they both retired early on in the season, midway. Corey went to go play Pew Pew games, and Stratus is a streamer, content creator, which, works for him. His personality, he's great. This is another team that I think was built for the event thing, because they looked decent when they were playing in the events early on. Didn't happen after that. And then they brought in some of the cast-offs from Vancouver and Janu and Stitch. That didn't work. Aim God, kind of okay. Arc wasn't the Arc of old with Jonak and the NYXL crew. Roar was what we thought Roar was going to be. It just was not great. The only guy, Stitch, actually showed up a little bit, but still, it just wasn't. It wasn't anything to write home about. Then, magically, they got Decay. So yeah, Decay came in, and then we had the whole thing with the playoffs and the meta falling in their lap and him destroying everybody and wrecking the NA side and all that crap. Yeah, I've talked enough about that when it happened, but it happened, and it is what it is at this point. It is history. It is not now. So, yeah, they did what they did. So last year's season was a failure except for the last month for this team. So this year, now, this team went out and did some things. We discussed who they got rid of. They brought in Mag, Jerry, Bebe, Closer, Fury, Rhea, and Assassin. Oh, and also they still have Tuba, and of course they have Decay. So this team is looking really good. I mean, I think they're going to be as good as what we're anticipating. The grade I gave them an A-, and here's why. We're just going to go right after that elephant standing in the middle of the room. And their names are Bebe and Closer. Don't like the support line on this team. They could have done a lot better. I would say, and go out on a limb, they would have done better to keep Aim God and Arc with this team. I mean, Arc retired, but Aim God and Arc on this team would be better than Bebe and Closer. Now, a lot of people are high on Closer still. There's a lot of talk, and I don't see it, because when I see him in there, he's okay. When I see Bebe in there, he's okay to not okay. I just think this is the one place where they failed. They loaded up the DPS. The tank line is probably top 4 in the league with Mag and Fury. That's the centerpiece for his team, and the DPS. But the problem is if the guys can't stay up or be kept up by Closer and Bebe, they're going to look like crap. And this is everything on this season for the Washington Justice hinges upon Closer and Bebe playing decent. I don't think we have to worry about Decay, Mag, Fury, or the other DPS guys. Tuba, Assassin, who's a fantastic player, and Jerry when he comes in and does his Jerry things. If Bebe and Closer can play average to above average, they will shine, this team. It's just, I don't know. It's just the feel I get is it's going to work to an extent, but it's not going to be enough to me. I don't think that they're going to be able to achieve things with this support line right now, unless they get coached up out of their minds, which is entirely possible with the guys that they brought in. I mean, they could play around that. Some of these guys, like Decay. I mean, Decay played on crappy teams before. He played on Dallas last year, where there was all kinds of problems. But this is essentially this could be a big step for this team this year, and then we'll see what happens in the offseason kind of thing. We'll take Bebe and Closer, see if we can get something out of them, and see who's on the market next year. Maybe you can get a Jonak. Maybe you can get a contenders kid that's really hot. There's a lot of things that can happen in these two positions. You don't know what's going to happen in the meantime. But to start top to bottom, if you count out the support line, in my mind, they're as good as every team in the league that we're talking about, winning things. Shanghai, Philly, Dallas, the Shock, of course, Gladiators, any of those teams, they're in this range of really good teams because first off, the tank line is sick. Mag is my front runner for Rookie of the Year if things play out the way I think they can. But it's still, it hinges upon Bebe and Closer. Like I keep saying, you got to keep the tanks up and all the stuff and whatever. Fury, we know how good Fury is. He's elite. He is still one of the best flex tanks in the league. They have Rhea in there. I thought that maybe bringing in another support would have been okay, but maybe they didn't find anyone they liked. I mean, these teams trial people, and they thought that these two guys would fit. Who knows? They could surprise the crap out of me with those two. But I like the tank line more than anything on this team. I think the DPS line, you have Decay and a bunch of pieces that you can fit in there and get a lot of different things with the hero pools and with the diversity of heroes that these guys play. With Tuba, Jerry, and Assassin. I think this is going to work out, in their favor, like I said, but the ongoing question with this team is what's going to happen. I could have given them a higher grade, but I just didn't like the support line. I know I've been talking about it, but I really want to watch this team play for a little bit. I want to see what they do. May Melee is going to be big for this team. I think them getting off to a good start and proving that they belong here, and Bebe and Closer, doing enough to get them through is going to prove to people that they are for real, and that they're not just this array of good talent. It's not your dad's Washington Justice kind of thing. I think that they have a lot of potential to win tournaments, be up towards the top. I think they're going to be in that range with Florida, Gladiators, that little muckety-muck in there. I think they're going to be in that area. I don't think they're as good as San Francisco and potentially Dallas because of the support line. I think the support line chunks them down a little bit. Not too far, but far enough to where you're going into your mind with favorites. I mean, outside of the Shock, because the Shock are the Shock. But like with the other teams. So your Dallases, your Floridas, your Gladiators, the teams that we've been talking about all for the last month. They're in that top chunk of teams. So, well above the half. I hope that Bebe and Closer work out, and then having guys on the bench like Jerry, Tuba, who you got bases covered here, and Assassin is just a great projectile guy alongside a Decay. Most of the time, I'm assuming, is what you're going to be running, and then when you have things where you need Farah or you have a double hit scan, you bring in Jerry, or you have those situations where you can rotate these guys in. I do also find it a little bit troubling that they don't have a great, outstanding, superb Tracer player, but every team doesn't have that either. There's guys that can work around it. Decay can play decently enough on Tracer. I liked his other stuff better. His McCree, his Widowmaker, I thought were fantastic. Obviously his Zarya is something to be reckoned with, so I suppose at times, if you wanted to, if Mag isn't comfortable playing a double flex support thing, you could put him in with Fury and he can run Zarya and whatever else, but I don't think that's going to happen necessarily. But yeah, this team is going to be good. I'm looking forward to seeing all the teams, minus a couple, that I think are going to be travesties. But yeah, the the Justice just look fantastic outside of the supports. I love what they did. I love what they're doing, and I think it's going to show. Definitely going to show this year, and I think they're going to do some good things. Throughout the year in the tournaments and stuff like that. Look for them to maybe even win one. You get the right meta with Decay and Mag and Fury, and you can get somebody rotated. If you happen to have something where you ran a double hit scan, I think you're good. You just your bases are covered, minus, like I said, your support line's suspect. Like I've said 1,000 times with this one, but anyway, that's going to do it for the Washington Justice, and that's going to do it for our team previews. So yeah, we've gotten through all 20 teams. The next thing to do is to rank them, sort of, kind of, in a way. I'm doing a power ranking thing, but I'm not doing it in this. This is what it is. I would much rather, and I may do it. We will see. I kind of like ranking teams 1 to 10, or for most of them. For me, it's pretty fluid. This is my thinking, I guess, going into the season, and then we'll update accordingly, like halfway. And then we'll give our thoughts going into the playoffs or something like that. I think that's the way I really want to do it, because things happen in a season. Look at last year. I mean, there's a lot of teams that we thought were going to be kind of crap, kind of meh, and they turned out to be good, or, teams that we thought were going to be really good were kind of bad, or mediocre at best. And then you had like weird scenarios like Vancouver just like dropping that bomb. That screwed up everybody's power ranking system. So yeah, that's up next. Look for that later on in the week, guys. But that's going to do it. I'd like to thank you all for joining me. All of your support's been greatly appreciated. If you're new, please hit a like, hit a subscribe, and don't forget that I also have another channel if you guys are into gaming. Obviously you are. You're checking this out, esports, but it's esports, but it's still gaming. I have a new channel. It's Misfit 99. The link will be down below. Right now, I'm doing a playthrough on Ark Solo, a solo playthrough on Ark Survival Evolved, where I'm going through all the maps and all that, and we're just having a good old time doing that to start. And then we're going to move on to other games and stuff like that too. In and out here and there. We're going to have a bunch of different series going on, hopefully, as the future unfolds. And then we're going to dive into Overwatch 2 and some of the other stuff that's upcoming next year. Really excited about it. Please check that out. That would be fantastic. But anyway, guys, this is Misfit. I'm out. Please stay safe. Have a good rest of your day. And I'll talk to you on the next one.